everyone. Welcome to Reggie'sTake.com podcast number 15. Tell me, do you bleed? You will. Sound familiar? Well, it should, as today my guest and I are going to be talking everything Batman. That's right, we're going to take a look at Zack Snyder's upcoming Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice as it sets up the DCEU's Justice League movie. We're also going to look back at all the actors who've donned the cape and cowl as Ben Affleck gets ready to debut as the Batman. Plus, there have been a total of 8 full-length Batman movies released to theaters dating back to 1966. My guest and I will also rank them as we see them from best to worst. Might not be hard to figure out what's one and what's last. See if you agree. Plus, we're going to also look at Frank Miller's graphic novel, The Dark Knight Returns, and a little bit of the animated film of the same name, as Dawn of Justice is taking some of their cues from this graphic novel. Also, joining me today is my guest from the True Believers, James, once again returning. How you doing?
Pretty good.
That's good. You looking forward to all this?
I am. I'm looking forward to all of this.
Cool. Before we get too far into today's podcast, just want to let you guys know this is kind of our way of doing a look ahead to, as we said, Dawn of Justice. No, we are not ignoring Superman. What we're going to do is here at Reggie's Take, we're taking a look at just Batman himself. We will talk about Superman, but James over at the True Believers is going to be taking care of the Superman part. So if you want to hear everything about Superman, the movies, and whatever else James may have planned, I won't spoil anything, you can tune over to the True Believers Facebook page or their YouTube page, or if you have trouble finding it, you can always go to my website, and about partway down on the homepage you can find links to both of those. So
that's right, this is going to be a true crossover.
So anyway, in case you're listening to this, no, we're not ignoring Superman. It's just Superman will be on the True Believers. Batman, all you want to know, will be here on Reggie'sTake.com. So hope you enjoy, and by all means, give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
This is definitely a crossover. It reminds me of when I was a kid, when there was like a big Spider-Man story, and it's like, oh, but the next issue of Amazing Spider-Man won't be the continuation. You're going to have to get Spectacular Spider-Man. And it's like, oh my God, you guys.
Or all the Batman comics that used to be in the 90s pretty bad. Yeah. Batman, The Shadow of the Bat.
Comics.
Yeah. And Robin. And it's like you end up buying 7 comics in a month just to get part of one story.
Yeah, the next part in the actual series won't even continue the story. So there you go. Yeah, so we're doing this thing. I guess Reggie is Team Batman and I am Team Superman. Although to be totally honest, I am more of a Batman fan than I am a Superman fan. But whatever.
And our reasonings for dividing it up is we didn't want to short one character in just one podcast if we did them both, because then you'd spend one time longer on the other than maybe. So we didn't want to short either of the characters, because really, these two are probably the 2 biggest superheroes out there, DC or Marvel.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
not to short Marvel anything.
They're really they've gotten to the point where they've really become American mythology. Both of them have.
Oh yeah, yeah.
1,000 years from now, the way we look back at Homer's Odyssey and all this, they're going to look back and talk about the mythology of Batman and Superman.
Now,
I don't know if any others will survive that long, but those two definitely will.
Oh yeah, Batman, Superman. There'll be any sort of incarnation of those movies for years to come. Even after this particular incarnation of both characters runs its course. Normally here on Reggie's Take, we don't do much with the comics. We talk about the comic book movies, or the movies that come from the comic books, but we don't cover the comics too much. It's never been my expertise, per se. That's why I leave that to you guys over at the True Believers.
I wouldn't call us experts either. We're more of
enthusiasts.
Yeah.
But anyway, I figured we'd start by at least taking a look very briefly at the Frank Miller's comic book, The Dark Knight Returns, which is what Zack Snyder is kind of loosely basing some of this movie on.
Now, so did Christopher Nolan, and so did Tim Burton. But okay.
But in respects as that you're actually getting Batman facing Superman in a battle. Christopher Nolan really based a lot of his stuff on a lot of the different comics. He took a little bit from the Nightfall series, and he took from pretty much anything Batman. So which was fine, but
well, definitely the look is the
Right.
costume is very
Right.
very similar to the Dark Knight Returns, and the idea of an older Batman,
grizzled.
yeah.
Well,
The Batman in Dark Knight Returns, he looks kind of fat, but then again, so does everyone else. So I don't know if that's just
I think
Frank
that's the way
Miller's.
yeah, it's just I think the way they've drawn, because even Superman has a big
Yeah.
barreled chest, and,
Yeah.
and I did see a thing where Frank Miller said, his drawings of that comic was not what you'd consider the best.
No, and I never thought so either.
And he's admitted, he says that's not the comic to, if you're an upcoming artist, you want to base your look off of, but for some reason everyone's thought this is such a big thing that they've all tried
Yeah.
to emulate him, which he said, I guess, imitation's flattery, but
Now, the funny thing about that is, before Frank Miller did Batman, he did Daredevil, and his art for Daredevil is amazing. It is kind of funny. Like, it is interesting that he admitted that. I didn't know that. But for Dark Knight Returns, it looks like he kind of rushed through. Like, I think he wrote the story and then just kind of... Because he did write didn't he write the story?
There's a little bit of a script in the back of this particular comic I have. I've got the hardcover deluxe edition one. But anyway, Dark Knight Returns was originally published as a 4-issue limited series. He wanted to create a fitting end for the character of Batman. This particular Batman takes place in a timeline outside the continuity of the DC universe. Certain elements of the main DC universe did eventually come to match Miller's take on this. Most notably one, and some may or may not know this, I did not know, was the example of Miller's Batman is haunted by the death of Robin, which later DC went back and
Killed Robin.
Right, with the death of Death in the Family story, where the Robin Jason Todd is killed by the Joker. So I did not know that until I read some of this going into that.
This particular book, it started as like you said, a 4-issue limited series. It's still considered a graphic novel. Same with Watchmen. That was a 12-issue limited series.
Well, and Nightfall series in the mid '90s, it ran over 2 years.
Several.
It was basically a 24-issue series.
Yeah. This one, though, they do definitely consider this a graphic novel.
There's also the animated movie. Now, I watched the Blu-ray version that has it all in one movie because originally when they made this movie, and I didn't write down who directed this animated movie, but I watched it and I kind of went along, flipped through the comics as I watched the movie, and they held pretty true to the comics. I mean, there was some things here and there, some things they left out, but you're going to expect that. They actually released this initially, the animated movie, in 2 separate parts. The first one came out in September of 2012, and the second part came out in January of 2013. Both had a runtime of 76 minutes. They didn't release the deluxe edition with the entire movie put together as one until October of 2013.
No, I didn't know that.
And if you watch it as one big whole movie, it's a 2-hour and 28-minute movie.
True.
But it goes by very well, and Peter Weller is the voice of Batman in this one. And also...
That's RoboCop, right?
Yes, RoboCop. He's also made a couple appearances on Star Trek movies, too, and also, I believe, Enterprise episode.
He was also on Dexter.
Also, in case if you weren't aware, this also had, the Joker. It had Harvey Dent, Commissioner Gordon, Oliver Queen, Green Arrow.
That's right.
As an older Green Arrow, but his one arm was missing in this particular thing. And also, as you quickly noted right before we started, Conan O'Brien actually does a voice of a talk show host.
By the way, that is so funny.
Which I won't spoil how that particular scene all ends, but...
I'm going to have to watch this. That is so funny. I love... actually, I have a theory on which scene they gave Conan O'Brien.
If you've read the comic...
I've read the comic. I know that there is a talk show scene in the comic. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome that they made that Conan. That is freaking great. Like, okay, I'm gonna have to watch this.
Now, I've never been big on watching these animated films like this.
Neither.
But after watching this, it makes me want to go out because I saw a couple others done and all by Warner Brothers of The Death of Superman and I think Batman Year One.
So they made a Death of Superman animated?
I believe so.
Okay.
So now after watching this one, I kind of almost want to go back and watch some of those others and see how those were, because this one, at least being animated and for what they did, they followed the comics pretty well, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it for an animated movie.
I've seen a couple of DC's animated movies. They did Under the Red Hood, which was pretty good.
And they definitely did not dumb it down for kids.
No.
This is straight. So that part I like.
I've seen Under the Red Hood, and I saw... Might have been All-Star... No, it wasn't All-Star Superman. Maybe it was. I don't remember. They're good. They're good.
If you haven't seen this movie, or you haven't even read the graphic novel Dark Knight Returns, definitely go pick it up and read it.
I am just ecstatic, though, that they gave that scene to Conan O'Brien. And now it messes up the timeline, of course, but, like, who cares? Like, it's a freaking cartoon. That is hilarious. Like, I love that.
Now, see, I watched the movie, and I didn't even realize that was Conan O'Brien's voice until I was watching some of the special features on there, and they said they had Conan O'Brien voice the talk show host guy, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big, if you've never read it or seen the movie, that's a pretty big scene. It's pretty awesome. Quick side note on Conan. I know we did podcast about Stephen Colbert a while back.
Yes.
And I want to do a follow-up on that eventually.
On your True Believers there.
I'm going to say this, though. Like, I love Stephen Colbert, but Conan O'Brien was my favorite. Like, I've seen him live when he did his tour when he got fired from NBC. I saw him live in Kansas City. It was the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Like, it was better than Jane's Addiction Live comes close, but this was, like, better than any, like, rock show I've ever seen, better than just anything. It was amazing. Really funny guy.
From here, I figured we'd talk a little bit about, since this is kind of leading us into Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. What's your thoughts on what you've seen on the trailer so far from this movie?
Well, it's taken me a long time to get any sort of enthusiasm about this movie, to be perfectly honest with you. This latest trailer actually got me going, and maybe it's because it's finally coming around, but okay, I'm starting to get pretty excited about it. I still have my reservations. There are two big things with this movie that are hurting it for me. One is that, even though I know that Batman has kind of become like American James Bond, so to speak. Like, there's going to be a new actor every few years. Part of me's not quite ready for a new Batman story yet. I love the Nolan movies, but then again, part of me is ready. It's like, well, the Nolan movies set it in a very, very realistic world. Mm-hmm. And maybe we could see Batman in a more comic book style world, like what Marvel's doing. That could be kind of interesting. The other thing that's hurting me is, I had mixed feelings about Man of Steel, and I have mixed feelings about Zack Snyder. I did like Man of Steel, and don't get me wrong. So with this whole thing, I still have kind of mixed feelings about this movie coming up. The new trailer looks really good. I'm starting to maybe come around with Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor.
I really don't think they're giving us the full picture of what his real character is.
Yeah.
So I think from what you've seen in the trailers of his portrayal of Lex Luthor could be giving you the wrong signal.
Yeah.
It could be. I don't know. Obviously, we'll have to wait and watch the movie to find out exactly how either Zack Snyder and them have written Lex Luthor and how Jesse Eisenberg is putting his twist on it.
Before we get too far into this, I do want to point out there has been new casting news. I don't think it's for this movie. It's for one of the later ones, like Suicide Squad or something.
Actually, the latest casting news was for Justice League movie, and they cast their James Gordon.
Yes.
J.K.
That's what I was getting at, J.K. Simmons.
Yes.
I'm going to say this. I love J.K. Simmons. What sort of world are we living in now where, you can just, jump a major character in an old major movie to a new one? That's so weird.
Yeah. And if you...
Honestly, I would have been happy. Normally I feel like a reboot should get a full reboot on everything. I would have been totally happy if they would have Judi Denched J.K. Simmons and just had him back as J. Jonah Jameson and the new Spider-Man.
That's what a couple of other podcasts I listened to, everyone was hoping that that's what would happen. And now that this news has come out that he's going to play, Commissioner Gordon, it obviously means he won't be returning to that role. And if you really think...
Well, not necessarily.
I guess, but
probably
not. Because if DC's got him tied down for Commissioner Gordon, obviously that means you're probably going to see him eventually in the solo Batman movie with Ben Affleck. So you're not going to want to have him cross over and do something for Sony. I guess it'd be maybe DC wouldn't be as upset with doing it for Sony, since it'd be technically Sony in the solo Batman movies and not necessarily Marvel, even though Marvel's helping Sony with their new new Spider-Man movies. But I don't know how they would feel about all that.
Well, and since we're on the subject of Commissioner Gordon, J.K. Simmons was the perfect J. Jonah Jameson. Gary Oldman was also the perfect
Gordon.
Commissioner Gordon. So, I know things change, but it's weird. It's weird that we're still holding on. And, freaking Daredevil's Batman. It's weird that we're still hanging on because there hasn't been enough time yet to change the generation of actors. We're holding on to the same actors who were in these superhero movies and just putting them in different ones. Like, how weird is that?
Yeah. DC is surrounding, at least as far as the Batman element, characters. Mm-hmm. You have Affleck, who's won an Oscar playing Batman. You got J.K. Simmons, who's won an Oscar playing Gordon. Leto, who's going to be in Suicide Squad as Joker. He's won an Oscar. The guy's playing Alfred.
Yeah.
He's also won an Oscar.
What's his name?
I can't think of his name right off the top. Jeremy Irons. Anyway, so you've got a lot of, quote, past Oscar winners coming into the DC universe, at least in the Batman realm part of it.
You've seen American Psycho, right?
My wife
It's one of my favorite movies.
My wife has.
So, so there's a scene, with Christian Bale, and he kills Jared Leto with an axe. So it's basically Batman killing the Joker with an axe. And just to make things even slightly weirder, Willem Dafoe is the investigative
cop
is the cop investigating everything. So it's like, what the hell is going on here? That's one of my favorite movies. You should watch it.
It's just interesting of the caliber of actors that DC's managing to pull in for this, whether it's for Justice League or for this movie getting ready to come out. Is the superhero movies changed that much where these actors are willing to want to jump on ship of these type of movies now?
I didn't watch the Oscars this year. Who won Best Picture? I'm sorry.
Best Picture, I couldn't tell you, but it wasn't one I could remember off.
I will say the idea that Mad Max was nominated is big.
It didn't win.
But just the fact that it was nominated. If you'll remember, when in 2008, The Dark Knight was not nominated. Apparently Spotlight won. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, Spotlight won Best Picture.
But if you'll remember back in 2008, The Dark Knight was not nominated.
And it really should have been.
It should have been, yes. And that was a point where I remember saying, it's a different world now, of course. But at that time I said, if The Dark Knight couldn't even be nominated, I'm not even asking for an Oscar. I'm just asking for a nomination. But if The Dark Knight couldn't be nominated, no comic book movie ever will. And then this year we have Mad Max. No, it's not a superhero or comic book movie, but it's pretty much in the same genre.
Right.
So
my question was just basically with these type of actors coming on board, with Marvel doing their stuff and then DC with Batman versus Superman. It used to be most actors, especially in the 70s and 80s, comic book movie would come around, most actors went the other direction.
Yeah.
Now it seems like you're getting...
Well, they're actually making them good now.
Now you're getting these actors who seem to be willingly coming on board. So does that mean the studios have changed their way thinking? I think we've all know that they have been. Obviously, these movies wouldn't be successful. We wouldn't be getting these
studios are going to follow the money, and they've been following the money so much. And like the fact of the matter is, we've been lucky to have good casts and good directors for a lot of these movies, and we've ended up making some really good movies, or they've ended up making some really good movies out of these. It's just like if you go back and look at like Western genres the same way. Like in the 30s and 40s, Westerns were kid shit basically.
And then 50s and 60s, they were...
And 70s.
They mainstream.
And then in the 70s, they started bringing in all these Oscar winners, and that's around the time that that the genre kind of died.
Yeah, 70s, mid-70s is when the Western basically died out. So after, 2-3 decades?
So, like, I don't know, if it's going to be a repeat of the past, like, be careful how much, like, Oscar buzz you get around these superhero movies. Like, be careful with that, because that could be a sign if it's a repeat of the past.
In a recent interview, actually, there's been recent interviews done with Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck, but we'll start with Affleck, since this is kind of Batman podcast here. He did an interview with Entertainment Weekly. One of the questions was, how was Batman pitched to you? Because you're just not signing on to one film or a couple of sequels. There seems to be no end in sight for the number of films that could involve your version of Batman. His response was, initially I took the idea of doing Batman in the abstract. I was sort of uncertain about it. I went in and looked at Zack's long-term worldview and the take he had on this character. It's within the kind of canon of Batman and the part of the Batman canon that he chose and the way he was thinking of it long-term that was interesting to me. And the partner that he chose in telling his story is Chris Terrio. Now, Chris Terrio is the Oscar-winning screenplay writer who wrote Argo. Chris Terrio wrote not only this movie, but he wrote Justice League, and he also helped the long-term vision. It sounds like Zack Snyder also kind of, Affleck liked what Snyder was doing, and with bringing on Affleck's Argo writer, I think that pretty much sealed the deal for him.
Yeah, I would say so.
If you read part of this interview here, basically the guy who asked him the question to her was, yeah, if you're signing on to play Batman, especially in this type of movie universe right now, it's not one or just two or three like Bale did. It possibly be for several movies more than just three. So
yeah, sort of like
with Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man. I mean, he's done 3 Iron Man movies, but he's also appeared in now 2 Avengers and now Captain America and obviously
a cameo in Hulk even.
Right, and then plus you have to figure he's going to be in some part of the Infinity War movie, so it's just not 3 and you're done and you're gone. It's the role that's going to follow you for a while.
Yeah.
And before we get too far into this, he also was asked about what was his contribution to the Batman legacy, which I found this one kind of interesting as well. He said, what I wanted to create a Batman that was sort of at the end of his rope physically and psychologically and emotionally. A guy who was beaten down by the world, a guy who's a little more of a slugger, who has more gray in his hair, and who was questioning whether the whole journey that he lived as Batman was in fact even worth it. Given that he's not a superhero, but now had to face super being, which none of the other Batmans had to confront in the movie world, it's an interesting thing to combine, because in the Nolan Batmans, which are the defining Batmans, there are no other superheroes. It's just this guy. He never has to reconcile with who he is, with his idea that there are these other people who can do these things supernaturally. Having to confront that, having to deal with that is my contribution to the character.
That's actually pretty interesting, yeah.
And they also asked him, because obviously you see the Robin suit, the question was, he had a Robin at one point, and we don't know exactly which Robin that it is, but we learned he died. And Affleck's answer was he's bitterly disappointed in the past that he's lost this guy who fought by his side. The character's death must have been devastating to him, and he suffered. We get this sense that he suffered a lot of a devastating loss before this movie even starts.
Very interesting.
I mean, obviously Affleck is, and I've heard before that he's a huge Batman fan. So
yeah.
obviously, besides being a Batman fan, there's something in all this that he got proposed and he looked at that he liked, and he said, yes, I'll do this. And I'm also kind of guessing maybe he's having some input on this too.
Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised.
You know, he gets a lot of flack for the Daredevil movie, and I don't think that movie was his fault. I sort of view it as kind of like the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern thing, only more so. Like,
well,
I
can compare Affleck's role as Daredevil as I could George Clooney taking on Batman and Batman Robin to a certain extent. Of he's an actor, he wasn't necessarily in control of the scripts in a certain sense at that time. It may be in that time of his career when he did Daredevil.
Big difference, though, is I think Affleck, I do actually think Affleck believed in the character of Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
It's just...
Now, it's been shown, though, with good writers, you can make a good Daredevil character. Because the Netflix series has shown that.
The big problem with that Daredevil movie...
And that's really before the big whole superhero thing started to become taken seriously.
That was at the beginning of it, yeah. That was right after Spider-Man. And, you know, when Spider-Man came out, yeah, we'd already had X-Men and Blade. They were kind of doing their own thing, and they were both good movies. But, like, Spider-Man was the one that made it big. So all of a sudden, these studios, particularly Fox, and yes, they did okay with X-Men, but, like, they had to do Daredevil and Fantastic Four, and I think they did Ghost Rider also, and gosh, what was the other? There was another one that was terrible. They were all just cheap knockoffs of Spider-Man.
Yeah. So far, the only thing Fox has done really good with their superhero stuff has been the X-Men universe.
And X-Men is very... Deadpool I'm counting as X-Men. X-Men has been very hit and miss.
Well, in the overall long-term sense, it's the only thing they've done. They managed well enough.
They've gotten better.
Letting Bryan Singer handle the X-Men franchise is probably their better move.
Well, see, when Bryan Singer left after X-Men 2, with X-Men 3 and with Wolverine Origins, they pretty much just did with that series what they did with Fantastic Four and Daredevil, which is like, whatever, we're going to make money off it no matter what.
Yeah.
Those movies suck. And I know a lot of people don't really care for The Wolverine. I think that's a decent action movie. I don't love it or anything, but I liked it. But yeah, for the most part, they've been in a good place for the most part. We'll see what happens with Apocalypse, though. Apocalypse is a very strange character. I don't really like the Apocalypse stories in the 90s. I didn't when I was a kid. So I think it's a very interesting character. I think what happened was he took the X-Men in a different direction, and I didn't really care for it. We'll see what happens. I'll stop talking about X-Men now.
Oh, that's fine. Just to briefly touch on that, what you're talking about with the X-Men, knowing that the movie studios haven't really followed any of the comics to a T, you almost have to wait for see what Bryan Singer has done with that particular and his vision of Apocalypse.
Yeah, and I don't mind them changing stuff. I just hope that they make a good movie. It's like more than anything.
You're just hoping this version of Apocalypse, at least in movie form, changes your opinion about Apocalypse character, at least in that sense, as far as the movie, right?
Yeah, you know, I like the character in the he is a great character. It's just like the whole Age of Apocalypse thing is so weird that I can't really fall behind it. But this movie looks pretty good.
Yeah. Did you know that Zack Snyder at one point looked at actually casting Christian Bale?
No, I did not. Well, I heard Christian Bale was thinking about doing this.
Snyder, in an interview as well, said that about Christian Bale, said this is a total and opposite reality from the Chris Nolan movies. Well, duh. It's another universe, so we couldn't hire Christian Bale if we wanted to because he doesn't exist in our world. Maybe we could hire him to play another part. We did talk about that briefly. I just wanted to hire Christian to play another part to make that obvious. Christian could play like Alfred with an aged makeup. No, of course not. But you know what I mean. Even the people at the studio would say, who are you getting from the other movies? And I was like, hey, come on, guys. Let's all understand it's a different world. In the Batman universe that Chris Nolan created, Superman would have had a hard time existing. That's why he did a reboot on the universe. That's why we've done a reboot on the universe, so we could allow these characters to exist together. We needed to do that to have Batman exist in this world.
You know what's interesting about that is I almost disagree with that. Even though like the Nolan trilogy could have been, it was hyper realistic. This could have been the beginning of like, oh wait, there's this other
a hyper realistic Superman.
Well, this could have been like the oh wait, there's aliens. You look at Iron Man, the first Iron Man, pretty realistic movie.
Right.
I mean, you know, like for the most part, I mean, it's all about war in the Middle East. Then all of a sudden Thor comes along and it's like, oh, and now there's aliens. They expanded that direction. They really could have done the same thing with the Nolan Batmans after that. They could have just been like, oh, here's Superman. There's aliens now. The universe is much weirder than we used to think. And, you know, like we've already gotten rid of Joker and Two-Face and Scarecrow and all these other like villains. Now we could start looking at the paranormal aspect of dealing with the world. So I don't totally agree with him on that. Like I think they could have totally kept the Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan stories going.
I think some people would have been more confused if they had with doing Man of Steel, and then if you would have brought Christian Bale's Batman into this universe, I think it'd have been more confusing to some people.
Maybe, yeah.
Granted, everyone threw a fit when they said, oh, we're going to have Affleck as Batman, but then again, everyone's thrown a fit with every time they've announced who's playing a new Batman. But it's always worked out in the end.
I think that's one thing that's actually kind of smart about Marvel is like a lot of their heroes. Well, first off, a lot of their characters aren't well known to the public. As much as the nerd trend is going, like still, like they're not super well known. But the actors that they pick aren't super well known actors either.
No.
And that's kind of smart on their part because it's like, oh, it's that one guy from that one show that I saw years ago. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's actually kind of smart on Marvel's part, I think. Really, the only big stars are like that were big before this were Robert Downey Jr., Jeff Bridges. Is that really it?
I'd have to sit down and look at who's all.
I guess Anthony Hopkins is Odin and
right. We're actually talking to people hired though to play in the
main ones.
Yeah. I think they've surrounded themselves with other actors that have been known. Mm-hmm. But as far as what you're talking about, playing the superhero,
and that's actually pretty smart, I think. On Marvel's part.
Marvel's done
there's
well
no enough. There's no I guess Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Ant-Man. There's there's no controversy around their casting. Like, it's like, oh, whatever, let's just see the movie.
Yeah,
Whereas DC, it's like trying to feed off of the old Dark Knight thing with Heath Ledger as the Joker when everyone threw a fit, and then it ended up being awesome. So now, like, I think that they're doing that on purpose with more and more characters. We're like, this is gonna throw the internet into another fizzle, and like I think they're doing that on purpose.
Like when DC released that early picture of Leto in the Joker makeup.
I'm sorry, like that's too juggalo for me.
Talking about actors who've played superheroes, how about the actors who've played Batman in the past?
Oh, yes. I don't know the guys who played the serials, so we're going to skip those.
Right. Yeah.
I've never actually seen the serials.
I've never seen. They're all black and white, and I think they're no more longer than like 15 minutes either.
I will say this. I've seen plenty of old serials like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, and they're really not very good. And I've seen some cowboy serials with John Wayne, too. And like usually those matinee serials really aren't very good. Like they're neat to watch. But I've heard that the Batman ones are like bad even for serials.
Now,
so like I've avoided them.
I believe I heard this off the special features off the animated Dark Knight Returns movie that we were talking about earlier. But I believe it was Hugh Hefner was showing a bunch of the
that's right.
Serials.
Nope, you're absolutely
for a bunch
right.
of people all together at one time, and there happened to be
at the Playboy
Mansion, and there happened to be an ABC exec at there, or at least someone who worked for ABC,
and they were all like smoking pot and drinking and laughing at it. Yeah,
who went back to ABC and said, "Hey, this looks like this could be fun, something interesting to do," and that's how the Adam West Batman on television came to be. The reason why we're including Adam West in this particular because there was a movie done during that show that was out in theaters. Yeah. So technically Adam West has appeared as Batman in theaters.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
And I think most people, and you're probably in the same boat as I am, you either love him or hate him for his campiness as Batman.
When I was a kid, I thought 60s Batman was the worst thing.
Well,
ever.
See, for me as a kid,
as I've gotten older, I've kind of appreciated it. Now, I will say this, I can't watch more than 1 or 2 episodes in a row or else I'll go crazy. One episode is enough.
Now, for me as a kid, up to a certain age, anytime I'd see that Batman movie come on that was with Adam West, I always thought that was cool because you didn't see too many superhero movies. You didn't hardly see anything, and with being Batman as my favorite character, it was like, oh, cool, Batman. So at the time, even the campiness didn't really bother me. It's as I got older, it's like, oh God, please stop it.
The shark
stop
repellent.
It. Yeah, it's like, please stop it. But and did you?
I do like the end when they. So the whole thing is like the villains, Joker, Riddler, Penguin, and Catwoman create something where you dissolve people in a powder. When they put all the
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? The world leaders back in their own bodies,
but
they put them in the wrong bodies, and Batman's like, ugh.
Like the UN leaders,
really stupid.
do you know how Adam West got that job as Batman?
No, I don't.
William Dozier cast West after seeing him play a James Bond-like spy character called Captain Q in a Nestle Quick TV ad.
Really?
He beat out Lyle Wagner for the role.
Huh. Well, Adam West and Burt Ward, they are so square in those.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me. They're just so square. And then the villains are like
over
really
the top.
Fun. Yeah.
You got classic villains. Actually, classic actors playing those villains. Cesar Romero, the Joker, Frank Gorshin, Riddler.
Well,
Burgess Meredith, the Penguin.
Vincent Price played a character as well.
Yeah, I can't remember who he played.
He played a character called Eggman.
Yes.
All his crimes were egg related.
Yeah.
Which is funny because like Vincent Price is like one of the most recognizable actors from that era. You guys couldn't have found like a better role for him. One interesting thing is Two-Face was never on the show.
No.
And Two-Face is...
I think I read something about that. They weren't sure how to pull him off.
Yeah, they couldn't.
And it didn't really fit into that style of show, so they didn't know where to go with that character.
Two-Face is really, as far as Batman villains go, I think he's actually a bigger villain than like the Riddler. Honestly, like they're all up.
I'd put him
there.
above the Riddler.
Like honestly, probably above Penguin even. You can make a clown funny, and you can make a little fat guy in a tuxedo funny. You really can't
make a guy
who's half his face is burned off
funny.
You can't make that funny.
No.
So that's why they avoided it.
One last thing.
There was a script written for Two-Face.
Well, someone also
turned that into a comic, which I own.
I posted on my Reggie's Take Facebook page at one time. Someone made a drawing of what Two-Face would have looked like for the 60s style Batman, and it was kind of like a half James Bond look and half.
Yeah. Was it, what's his name? The guy who...
I can't remember.
Let's see.
But it kind of had this sophisticated look, but at the same time, it still had that Two-Face feel to it as well. The guy drew him more kind of in a classy style, and not necessarily so gross.
I have trouble remembering things sometimes when I do it. Alex Ross. He did the art for the... Let me show it to you, because I own this comic. You should definitely get it. It's Alex Ross.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of.
And he does a lot of comic work. He did he's more of an illustrator. He did the opening credits. He did all the artwork. I don't know if you remember, but he did all the artwork for the opening credits of Spider-Man 2.
Really?
So what he did was he drew scenes from the first movie.
I seem to remember the
and
opening.
It's like it was a really great opening. It was like previously
kind of quickly refreshed you of the first movie. Yeah,
that was his. That's the same guy who does this.
Really?
He does a lot of very interesting stuff. He tends to do a lot of comic book stuff. I don't know if he ever does any actual books. He usually does covers because that's just kind of his style.
Right.
Like, I don't think you can really make a comic book based on that. That comic book is very good. You should read it. It's hilarious. It's based on the actual script that never turned into a show, and it's very good.
One last quick fact about Adam West. Back in 1970, and of course this was after his Batman days were done, West was offered the role of James Bond in Diamonds Are Forever.
No, really?
West declined it, later writing in his autobiography that he believed Bond should always be played by a Brit.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
Although George Lazenby is Australian, but I think Australians kind of count as sort of British.
Yeah.
They didn't rebel like we did, so there you go.
For a second, I thought you could say part of the mothership, but... And then, of course, Michael Keaton played Batman twice, became the first actor to ever portray Batman twice on the big screen.
I guess that's right, yeah.
In Batman in 1989 and Batman Returns in 92. He drew a lot of controversy when they announced he was going to play Batman because everyone thought, oh my God, you're hiring Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
But Tim Burton's Batmans were obviously way better than the next two that came after it.
The first one is actually
really good.
A really good movie. The second one is interesting.
My problem's with the second one, and it's not with who they cast to play the characters.
Yeah.
It was always seemed like they focused way too much on Catwoman and Penguin.
Yeah, they did.
And only time you ever saw Batman was to the rescue. It didn't focus enough on Batman trying to solve what's going on like he did in the first one.
Well, and that was even sort of a problem in the first one, but in the second one, it's amplified to a point where you can't ignore it.
It's noticeable. Yeah. It was noticeable, at least to me, in the second one, more so than whatever may have been in the first one.
I still like Batman Returns.
And my only problem...
I don't love it, but I do like it. I will say, I've noticed like a lot of that list that you showed us a couple podcasts ago where they put Batman Returns in the top 20.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, you snobs. Like, shut up. You don't really like this movie, okay? Just shut up. I don't know if it's a hipster thing or if it's just a snob thing, but this whole trend of putting things in there that aren't really that great, but like acting like they're greater than they are, it's like, oh, shut up. It's like, I get it. You like the fact that this movie is, that the setting of this movie is based greatly on old German expressionist films, silent films. We all get it. Now shut up and quit trying to act so smart, okay? Don't put that on your list.
The casting of Michael Keaton for the first Batman movie in 1989, fans went so crazy thinking that their beloved superhero was going to get the Adam West treatment again.
They only had to wait a few years for that.
That Michael Keaton's casting caused such a controversy that 50,000 protest letters were sent to Warner Brothers offices.
Oh my God. Nerds had to work a lot harder back then. Now we just
email,
bitch about things on Facebook. Not even email. You just go on Facebook,
Twitter, whatever.
Oh, I can't believe.
To help appease some of the fans, Warner Brothers at the time brought in Bob Kane as a film consultant.
Honestly, Michael Keaton is interesting. He sort of did what Christian Bale did, a similar thing, in that both of them focused more on Bruce Wayne as as a character rather than Batman.
You know who else was considered for Batman at that time?
Who?
Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Pierce Brosnan, Tom Selleck, and Bill Murray.
Wow.
Interesting choice of actors.
I'd like to see a Bill Murray Batman.
I somehow imagine that somewhere across between what he does on Stripes and Ghostbusters. That would definitely get an Adam West treatment Batman.
When you were probably in middle school when
that Batman came out?
Yeah.
I just graduated high school.
Oh, okay.
I'm dating myself, yes.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, anyway,
1989, yeah. This movie came out right after I graduated high school.
So, like, kind of tell me about that then, like, what that was like. Because I know my experience of graduating high school with Spider-Man. I'd like to hear the experience of you with Batman. And, like, I was too young to see it.
Well, see, Batman for me at that time when I saw it was coming out, I was a little apprehensive with Michael Keaton, but I wasn't necessarily as maybe upset as what all the nerds were at that time. I was more open-minded. It's like I didn't care who was playing Batman. I just was like, cool, it looks like they're doing a quote a real Batman movie.
Yeah,
I want to go see it.
Yeah.
And 1989 for me was a fun year for movies because not only did you have Batman, which I loved, but you also had the third Indiana Jones movie. You had Lethal Weapon 2.
Yeah.
You had a lot of good movies that came out that year that I spent a lot of time at the theater. So I loved that 1989. It's like if you really don't think about it till years later. It's like, oh wow, all these movies came out in 1989. That to me that I still love even today. I love what they did. The only problems I ever had with that first Batman movie was they killed off the Joker. I didn't like that they killed off the Joker. To me, they should have kept the Joker alive. Same way in Batman Returns, they should never have killed Penguin. That was my only really big issues with those first two movies is they kept killing off the villains.
What's interesting about that movie is they also had and by the way, I just want to point out, that's very funny because when I graduated, Spider-Man, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars Episode 2 came out. Mm-hmm. And I saw all those movies multiple times. With Batman, of course, Billy D. Williams is Harvey Dent. And, when I was a kid, I didn't put two and two together. But when I got older, I was like, why did they jump to the Penguin when they had the perfect villain for the second one?
I don't know.
There.
Maybe they considered it and Billy D. Williams didn't want to do it and they said,
no, that's not the case.
I don't know.
Tim Burton.
I don't know. So
Tim Burton wanted to do a Penguin one, and I think that's, if they could have kept him around to do a third one and brought it back to Two-Face on the third one, that would have been fine. But jumping to the Penguin was a mistake. Like, I think doing a movie with
I didn't have a problem with them doing Penguin. I just didn't like... There's something about that movie that just... It's okay. It's better than the other two, but...
Yeah, it's not great. But it's weird. It doesn't make any sense. And
yes, it was probably darker than the first one, but in a certain sense, it didn't bother me.
I think the dark stuff in that movie is like... almost cartoonishly dark. Like, I mean, it doesn't really... I don't know. Reading old reviews from people really had a stick up their butts back then.
Well, see, and all the complaints about that movie being too dark was what caused Warner Brothers to make a change in directors and style, which I think then hurt the series at that time.
All they had to do was say, hey...
Tone it down.
Let's not have the Penguins say, I like that pussy anymore to the
Catwoman. Or bite off a guy's nose.
I forgot about that. That is pretty weird.
So after Michael Keaton left, which he was willing to come back for a third Batman movie, but he wanted to go back to kind of more of an origin story of Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Which they weren't willing to do. I think I read, I don't know how true this was, were talking with Robin Williams about possibly doing the Riddler. Keaton was open to the idea of maybe coming back if Robin Williams was the Riddler, but when all that changed, something happened. I don't know how true all that was, but he obviously exited the franchise and they brought in Val Kilmer.
Side note, I do want to point out, love the Catwoman, Batman Returns.
Michelle Pfeiffer?
She is the best part of that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I love Danny DeVito. I do. I love Danny DeVito. I love Michael Keaton, but honestly,
and Danny DeVito if it weren't casting as Penguin wasn't a bad choice.
No. And it wasn't a bad choice. I will say the script, the actual story of the Penguin wasn't a very good choice. It's not casting decision. It's not the casting's fault. I think the story behind the Penguin is a little too weird for that character. But I will say, the one thing that's always kind of kept me in defense of Batman Returns, there are other things that I will defend that movie for, but the one thing that has always made myself defend it is Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I think that's hands down the best part of the movie.
Oh, and her outfit when that. Ooh.
Oh yeah, too. Yeah.
When you're in your early 20s and looking at Michelle Pfeiffer in that cat outfit, I mean, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Val Kilmer for Batman Forever in 1995.
Yeah, totally unmemorable, by the way.
Right. I will say Batman Forever is a watchable movie. Well,
compared to Batman and Robin,
it's watchable. Warner Brothers didn't necessarily give full control to Joel Schumacher for that movie either. They kind of they let him do certain things, but they also said no to a lot of things he wanted to do, which after Tim Burton was also a producer, Batman Forever, which helped a little bit.
But he's really only producer in name only. He's even said that.
Yeah.
That they gave him money to put his name on it, and that's it.
The movie was all right, and Val Kilmer did an okay job as Bruce Wayne and Batman. To do as we did just a little bit ago, the other candidates considered for Batman Forever was Daniel Day-Lewis, Ralph Fiennes, William Baldwin, and Johnny Depp.
I would like to see a Daniel Day-Lewis Batman. I love, what is that? There Will Be Blood.
Okay.
Have you seen that?
No.
Sort of, it's like, I guess you could call it a Western. It's not really a Western, but it takes place in the West.
And I don't know how true this is, but Val Kilmer allegedly accepted a role without even reading the script.
Sounds about right.
The reason why Kilmer didn't return for Batman Robin, which is probably a good decision, was he felt Batman wasn't getting as much screen time as the villains were.
That was a trend that started with movie 1, as we just pointed out. Well, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger.
In movie 1, though, I could kind of see why Jack Nicholson got top billing with the Joker, because the studio probably felt that was a better way of trying to sell the movie, being that they had Michael Keaton as Batman and not knowing how people would react to it. So in that regards, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, but that's just where it started, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I also have to point out, Two-Face is one of my favorite villains, and I think they totally missed an opportunity. They missed so many opportunities, not only with a great villain, they also missed an opportunity on bringing Billy D. Williams back and having some continuity. And then they also missed the opportunity on the fact that Tommy Lee Jones could have pulled him off very well if they would have given him a better script. Playing a Joker wannabe, he did very good at it, but that's not what he should have been playing.
Right.
So,
and Jim Carrey wasn't too bad as the Riddler.
Jim Carrey was actually pretty good as a Riddler.
Some of his antics were, in line.
As they always are.
Weren't too bad, and that was kind of at the time in his heyday. So that movie's definitely loads better than what Batman and Robin was.
Yeah, because it's like you said, it is watchable. It's watchable. It's not good, but it's watchable. Batman and Robin is unwatchable.
Oh, and this is where we get now George Clooney, who took over the role for one movie. Batman and Robin was so bad, it received 11 nominations at their Razzie Awards. That's pretty bad.
We talked about this before. My friend and I play that if you can name one good thing about the movie.
Yeah.
Actually, I forgot we could name one good thing about Batman and Robin. It's such a lame thing. The one good thing we could name was relationship between Batman and Alfred, as Alfred's probably dying. But even that is Buddy doesn't die, and who cares because this movie sucks so bad. So you almost can't even count that, but we went ahead and did.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on Batman and Robin because
no one does.
It's just not worth it. But what I do want to spend the time on is George Clooney himself. Now, obviously, Batman and Robin didn't hurt his film career, obviously, but he was still also doing ER at the time when he did this. Yeah. Back in May of 2015, he made an appearance on the Graham Norton Show on BBC. And on the Graham Norton Show, Clooney said that he took the role of Batman because he thought at the time it would be a good career move. Well, obviously it hadn't hurt him. Maybe it could have been, but the only career move Clooney should have done at the time was turn it down, in my opinion. It didn't do anything to help his career. It could only have really hurt his career at that time, as he's trying to get into the movies. During that show, they put up the picture of him in the Batman suit, and the Batman costume for that movie just sucked. It really did. But during that interview on the Graham Norton Show, he apologized for Batman and Robin. Well, that got me to thinking, it's this guy's been apologizing for this movie for way too longer than he really needed to be. Part of what I wrote on my post that day was, I respect that Mr. Clooney feels he should apologize to the Batman fans and to movie fans in general, but he shouldn't have to. Warner Brothers and Joel Schumacher should have to be the ones apologizing for the failings of Batman and Robin. Because in my book, it's not George Clooney's fault. It was the script, the director, and the studio itself that failed in that movie.
Yeah.
Now, what I did after all that, at the end of my post, I put a letter to George Clooney. I put on here, "Dear Mr. Clooney, thank you for trying to make us all of us who saw Batman and Robin at the theaters feel a bit less jilted about the money we wasted to see a film that never should have been made. For your efforts as an actor and a human being in taking the high road and feeling the need to apologize for something we as movie fans don't or shouldn't hold against you, thank you. You have done more than your fair share in trying to take blame for Batman and Robin, but as a fan of Batman and movies in general, I relieve you of your burden.
Whoa.
You no longer now or in the future have to make excuses for Warner Brothers or Joel Schumacher. I hope by relieving your burden and the need to say I'm sorry will aid you in your movie career and most of all the nightmares from the nipples on the batsuit. Sincerely, Reggie'sTake.com."
Nice. Nice. Now you do know, have you ever watched the
I thought that was pretty
DVD
good.
comment? I thought it was very good. I hope he reads it. I hope he reads it and like decides, well, all right, I'm gonna make Ocean's 14.
I would pay to go see Ocean's 14.
Have you ever watched the DVD commentary for Batman and Robin?
No, I have not. I have not watched Batman and Robin in quite a while.
I'm going to send you. It's not worth watching. I'm going to send you a YouTube clip from it though, just to watch. It's Joel Schumacher's commentary, and there is a point in the movie where he just breaks down and apologizes for everything.
Really?
And it is the most sincere thing. I will send it to you. This is on the DVD. This came out like 10 years ago, maybe longer. No,
Wow.
Definitely longer. This would have come out in like 2000. You know, through the whole commentary, he's talking about, well, we designed this, we did this.
I do know.
Typical. And then all of a sudden he's like, I just got to say, I'm really sorry for all of this. Like, it is the craziest thing, and I'll send that to you.
Well, I do know Warner Brothers had several different directors and writers come through, offering Batman stories to do more movies. And Schumacher actually, after Batman and Robin, went and say, I think I can do a better job.
Batman Triumphant.
But, obviously none of those movies ever.
I don't totally really blame Schumacher either. Well, I blame him to an extent. I don't totally blame him. I think that Warner Brothers at the time was so greedy on toys, on selling toys and merchandise,
instead of just
that
worrying
they didn't
about
even
a good
care
Batman.
about making a good movie. I do believe that there was a lot of pressure from them. Now, that said, and I think I'm actually paraphrasing Schumacher here, he was still the captain of the ship, and the ship went down, so he has to go down with it.
Right.
I don't totally blame him, but he does have
he has to
accept responsibility, which he has. But yeah, that's a terrible movie. Now, I also want to point out that I think it's time for everyone to kind of quit complaining about that movie, because if that movie wasn't as awful and hated as
we wouldn't have
gotten Batman Begins. And let's face it, compared to Batman Begins, even the Tim Burton movies freaking suck,
So going by what you just said there, I need to write a letter to Joel Schumacher thanking him for making such a bad movie that we got Batman Begins.
You should, yeah. You should. You should. Like I said, even like the Tim Burton Batman movies are pretty mediocre on the scale of superhero movies. And we never would have gotten Batman Begins. If we didn't get Batman Begins, I honestly believe after Spider-Man was done, without Batman Begins, we probably wouldn't have gotten the second wave of superhero movies. So,
of course, then Christian Bale took over the roles Batman Begins, and then The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises,
which are all very good movies,
right? And originally considered as well, besides Christian Bale, were Billy Crudup, Jake Gyllenhaal, Joshua Jackson, and
Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, Cillian.
Cillian Murphy is the Scarecrow in Batman Begins.
Really?
Yes. There's actually, I've read about this before. Cillian Murphy.
Okay, because I have not paid attention to actually who played the Scarecrow.
I'm kind of a fan of Cillian Murphy. Cillian Murphy applied for Batman. Obviously, he doesn't look the part for Batman. But while he was there, the casting crew was so impressed with him that they said, "Do you want to play one of the villains?"
Now he did become the first actor to ever play the same villain
in more than one movie.
In more than one movie,
They're cameos, but still, yeah, he is the first one.
You see him at the beginning of Dark Knight, and then you see him there in the middle of Dark Knight Rises.
I loved him as Scarecrow. The only issue that I have with Batman Begins is they kind of build Scarecrow up as the main villain,
but then they
just drop him, which is fine. Ra's al Ghul is a better villain anyway, and
when you look back at it, Ra's al Ghul then helps kind of, even though he got killed off, sets up really Dark Knight Rising with his daughter coming in wanting to finish his work. And so it all worked out.
It works out way better. And Ra's al Ghul is a better villain. And what's his name? Qui-Gon Jinn. What's his name?
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson, thank you. Liam Neeson is freaking awesome. I mean, obviously, making Ra's al Ghul the surprise main villain was the right choice. But my issue is, like, after you built up all this stuff with Scarecrow and just drop him, they didn't even give him, like, a satisfying ending. It's like, oh, he gets tased.
Yeah.
See you later. Like, what is that? That is, like, really my only gripe with that movie. I think Batman Begins is pretty much the perfect movie. I would actually argue that story-wise, it's better than The Dark Knight.
Really?
I'm just saying, as far as the storyline and plot line. Dark Knight is a better movie overall, but I think the story behind Batman Begins is fantastic. I love the idea of a guy. I mean, it's the same old Batman origin story, but it really shows how powerful the mythology is. A guy abandons all his wealth, moves to another land, and trains himself to become this hero, and goes home and saves I mean, it's fantastic.
Assuming all the Christopher Nolan Batmans would still be the same, if you took Christian Bale out, could you pretty much put any other actor in the role of Batman and still have it be the same?
Christian Bale was amazing. Like Jake Gyllenhaal, ugh. Like fuck that. Like, ugh. No, I don't think so. Christian Bale did something, and I know everyone makes fun of the Batman voice, but Christian Bale did something with the character of Bruce Wayne that no one has been able to do. Not even he made him more human. Like he is, even though he's a rich guy, he's a billionaire with dead parents and is super smart and really good at kung fu. In spite of all these things that, Batman should not be a relatable character at all. Somehow, in spite of all these things, these amazing accomplishments that no human, that only like probably a handful of humans could compare to, somehow he's still relatable in these movies in some way. And I don't think anyone else could have. I'm sure someone else could have done it, but probably not,
Okay. I don't want to overlook these guys here we're going to talk about just really, really briefly, because this is running really long here. There's been several people that have voiced Batman for animated features, most of them direct to DVD and home video. Probably the biggest one is Kevin Conroy. Did the animated series. His first time doing the voice of Batman was for the animated series that debuted in 1992. He's done a total of 3 other video series plus video games. I think his voice is, as far as animated, it's probably synonymous with Batman.
It is, and I will say I'm one of those people when I read a comic,
you're thinking his
voice.
You're thinking his voice.
Yeah.
He actually is coming back to do the voice of Batman for the animated movie that's coming out sometime later this year. And I can't remember which comic story they're doing. It's not the Death in the Family. It's not the one where Robin dies. Joker ends up wounding Batgirl and turning her into basically...
that's the Alan Moore...
you know which one I'm talking about. I should have written it down and I didn't. I figured I could remember it.
Actually, I was going to talk about that a little bit. Have you ever read it?
No.
That is it's very good. Killing Joke.
It's also the one where Warner Brothers has told the people who are doing the animated movie that if they do it and it comes out as an R version, that they have no problems with it because they know of the source material that it's brutal.
It's brutal. It's rough.
So I almost want to pick that one up just to see what they do with it.
Alan Moore, by the way, he's also the guy that wrote Watchmen and V for Vendetta.
Okay.
So just in case you didn't know, but yeah, very, very good comic. That's an odd comic because
now was that just one comic or was that a couple of comics?
I don't know. I owned it as a book, so I don't know if it was a compilation. No, it's just one. It's one very long comic, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
It was just a standalone, but it's long. It's very long. It's probably about as long as 4 comics in one.
Kind of like what the Dark Knight Returns would be, because that was a 4-issue.
I love this one because I think when it was written to be an Elseworld story, so to speak, like a non-canon story. They ended up making it sort of canon, obviously, with Barbara Gordon being in a wheelchair for 20 years after that.
Well, it's just like with The Dark Knight Returns, they mentioned mentioned something about a Robin being killed,
Yeah.
and then they end up eventually telling you that story. So
interesting about it is that's the Batgirl story. In this story, at the end of the panel, it almost makes you. It's almost up to you whether or not Batman kills Joker or not at the end.
really,
Oh, you only see silhouettes, but the silhouette looks like Batman is snuffing Joker out.
huh?
And that's the end. And you can't really tell what's going on, but I know when I read it, that's just what I assumed was like, yep, Batman finally did it. He finally killed the Joker.
Well, he kills
and good for him.
He kills the Joker.
He kills him here too. Yeah.
in The Dark Knight Returns.
This one he definitely does
Yes.
though. Like
Yes.
he's got the blood all over his chest
Right.
and everything. Yeah.
Well, that's because he had been shot, and then also Joker stabbed him in the same place where he got shot.
Yeah.
And that was the blood. And the new police commissioner was hunting him down as well.
Yeah.
Hunting after Batman. So it was a unique story. Of all the Batman movies, and I think we've kind of done this once before, but including the Adam West Batman, how would you rank them from worst to first?
Batman movies?
Yes, Batman movies.
Well,
Batman and Robin's got to be
from
at the bottom.
worst to first?
Worst to first.
Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, honestly, the Adam West Batman, then Batman Returns. This is where it gets
It gets harder. It gets harder here.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it's a tough choice between Dark Knight Rises,
Batman Returns.
Batman 89. I already said Batman Returns.
Oh, okay. That's right.
So it's a tough choice between Batman 89 and Dark Knight Rises. I'm going to go ahead and say Batman 89,
Okay.
then Dark Knight Rises, then Batman Begins, then Dark Knight. So I guess all three of the Nolans are in a row. I am going to say, though, like Dark Knight Rises and 89 Batman are about tied for me.
See, I'd probably put Batman Forever above the Adam West in my ranking.
Okay.
In my rankings, at least.
Yeah, that's another one where it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I get you.
They both kind of suck.
And the only reason why I put Batman Forever above the Adam West one is because the campiness for me has to be below.
It has to be less than 30 minutes.
because as you said, Batman Forever, well, for me at least, Batman Forever is a watchable movie, where Adam West's Batman movie.
You have to look at that as a comedy.
Right. You can
Like,
watch
that's
it.
the only way.
You can watch it, but at the same time, it takes a little bit. At some point, you have to kind of get your teeth to finish getting through it.
Yeah.
And in that regards, I have to drop it down below Batman Forever.
There's those two trouble spots.
Right.
But other than that, everyone is going to pick Dark Knight #1 and
Batman and Robin.
Everyone's going to pick Batman and Robin at the end. There might be some jerk out there who's like, no, Batman Returns is the best. It's like, shut up.
So, where do you think Ben Affleck will eventually fall into this group of actors playing Batman, assuming Dawn of Justice does well, the Justice League movies do well, he gets his own solo movie, and they do well? I'm asking this hypothetically because we haven't seen anything of work, work yet, but just from what we're seeing and hearing, you think Affleck's character will end up finishing second to
I think so.
Christian Nolan?
I think so. And
I mean,
I
Christian
think
Bale.
so, but I gotta say though, like the competition's not that high for second place. Like I like Michael Keaton's Batmans, but neither of them are great movies. So like,
But you also have to kind of give Michael Keaton's Batman a little bit of a discount because of for when they did them, late 80s, early 90s.
yeah, there's not a whole lot of competition. I think he might be able to beat Keaton out to get second place. I don't see him beating out the legacy of Christian Bale. Don't see that.
The only way I would see him beating him out would be he does the movie, he directs it, he helps write it. It actually gets nominated for an Oscar, and he wins an Oscar in some form or fashion for that movie. Then you might be able to argue he might be better than Christian Bale's, but only if that would happen.
The thing that's making this Batman distinct from the previous one, which on the one hand it's cool, on the other hand it does kind of hurt it, is the fact that it is becoming more of a comic book. Mm-hmm. While it does help in some ways, it also hindrances it in a lot of ways. Like I don't think people are going to look at it.
Now I've heard nothing but positive reviews about as far as the look of Batman. The costume.
He looks really good.
Everyone seems, all the fanboys and non-fanboys alike seem to like this current costume. And if you think about it, you really needed to have something completely different than what Christian Bale had.
Yeah,
because you didn't want anything too similar, because you didn't want to confuse anybody. You wanted to make sure this is a completely different Batman.
No.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to mention earlier when you're talking about the trailers and we were beginning of the podcast was my big thing with the trailers. They didn't, and I think we may have discussed this once before. They didn't need to reveal Doomsday in the trailer.
No,
that
they
could have
did
been
not.
a complete surprise.
Well, so this is our Batman versus Superman.
If you want to catch the Superman part, obviously you'll have to turn over to your podcast and the True Believers.
Absolutely.
Both my podcast and your podcast should come out fairly close within the time frame of each other.
Yeah.
So if you don't see True Believers out of Superman's right away, don't fret too quickly.
We need to do this again for Civil War, which is funny because I think Civil War looks better than this movie. But
We'll see. I mean, we can have that comparison because obviously we're going to be talking about this movie after we've seen it, and obviously then after that we're going to be hyping up Civil War, and then I think the big thing we're going to be discussing with Civil War is what they did or did not do at the end of that movie. You know, did they kill off Captain? Is War Machine gone? What kind of changes have they made to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Has the Russo brothers actually taken that risk and step of actually killing off a character or two, or implying at least one? So
to be fair, Joss Whedon took that risk, but
he took that risk. But if you're talking about Age of Ultron, he took.
No, I'm talking about Agent Coulson.
Oh,
Agent Coulson was dead, and he was supposed to be dead.
Right.
Disney capitalized on his popularity and gave him a show. That had nothing to do, unfortunately, is what kind of set off the stigma that Marvel has that they can't kill off characters now.
Well,
they originally had every intention to kill him off.
Well, and same way I feel with Age of Ultron, we all thought, okay, it's going to be Hawkeye. Yeah. And I think that would have been the better character to kill off and had a bigger impact.
I think so too.
Hawkeye instead
that
of
said,
Quicksilver.
now that I'm seeing him in Civil War, I'm glad they killed off Quicksilver. Screw that guy.
But anyway, that's hindsight 2020.
Yeah, it would have been a better movie if they did that.
Obviously, Batman is a very rich, long history character with DC, created by the late Bob Kane. He's definitely my favorite superhero, Marvel or DC. I look forward to seeing what Ben Affleck does with the character. I hope he kicks Superman's ass. I'm just kidding. The movie itself looks like a fun ride from what I've seen, and I hope it is. I really don't want to wish DC ill will, same way I wouldn't want to wish Marvel, because as a fan of these movies, I like to be able to enjoy both universes and for a couple of years more. Any last thoughts?
No, just tune in to my show and we'll talk a little bit about Superman.
Hope you enjoyed our little talk about Batman. As always, you can find my podcast at reggiestake.com, my Facebook page, or you can even follow me at Reggie's Take on Twitter. Either way, hopefully you turn over the True Believers, and we'll talk at you next time.